Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're taking a look at some interesting cards trending on the market because of how they're affecting the format. Now with some of these, we're talking about things that have already happened, as we just had YCS Birmingham this past weekend. But looking forward, I think the most notable thing is that we have the Blue Eyes structure deck coming out at the end of this week. While we have talked about a bunch of things over the past couple of months, there are some other things that I think are still worth mentioning that might have been a bit easy to overlook before. So you guys will definitely want to know what cards to either scramble and pick up at the last minute if you're interested in playing this strategy, or maybe look to offload when the demand for these cards is going to be at their highest. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's get the big one out of the way. We have Fire King Ulcanix. So at YCS Birmingham, I think the big thing that really drove everyone insane was seeing Dinka Bui take first place at the event with the pure Fire King strategy. Obviously, so much of the format has been dominated by Ryziel and Malice that a lot of people just instantly assumed that rogue decks wouldn't really be able to do anything. But we have to remember that this YCS was in Europe, where we always see these random decks winning big events. And to be fair, Dinka Bui is obviously a very talented player that built his deck knowing how to navigate the Ryziel and Malice matchups really well, and obviously did that to be able to make it as far as he did. Ulcanix is one of the best cards for the Fire King strategy, basically giving you an island pop and search on summon, while also bringing out the original Garunix from the deck when it is destroyed. Now this card is definitely a 3 of for the strategy, and it's something you probably want to open with every single game. That said, most of the Fire King cards were pretty cheap since they were included in a structure deck. Ulcanix is the piece that was not coming as a secret rare in Rage of the Abyss, so its price is actually quite volatile. After original Sinful Spoils was banned, I think people assumed that Fire Kings were completely dead, so we had seen secret rare Ulcanix down at $8 to $10, while the QCR printing was down at around $25. However, with this result, both versions have shot way up in price, and we now have the QCRs up at $60 a piece, while the secrets are back up to just over the $20 mark. Now, of course, I don't expect all of the hype for this one to stick. I do think that Ryziel and Malice are just better overall strategies, especially when you're more familiar with what you're playing against. I'm sure that some people will have to refamiliarize themselves with Fire Kings and how to play the matchup after this event. Either way, Ulcanix should be reprinted in the 2025 tins, so I would personally be looking to offload these while they are seeing some hype. Next up, another card that caught my attention this past weekend was Kashtira Fenrir. So the Kashtira engine is something that's sort of fallen off recently. At the end of last year, we saw a lot of players trying Fiendsmith Kashtira, which felt sort of like an anti-meta deck. It was actually really strong. However, with Ryziel and Malice coming out, the Kashtira engine has basically completely fallen off. Now, it seems that the Kashtira cards have actually found a new home now in Kristrons. The Kashtira cards all have really strong search and disruption effects. They're big bodies and they happen to be level 7, so you can actually pull off some pretty interesting Synchro and Xyz plays with them. I saw an Azamina Kristron Kashtira deck online. It actually seems really interesting. Of course, Kashtira Fenrir is one of the strongest standalone monsters in the game, being a 2400 attack point body that can search for another copy of itself while also banishing any face-up card on the field. Now with Fenrir, because it hasn't seen too much play recently, we've seen all versions of the card go down. These were at around $15 to $20 each, but recently we've seen both the secrets and ultras down at around the $10 mark, with the ultis also falling to between $20 and $25. I think there's two big things to watch out for with Fenrir. One is the upcoming ban list, since a bunch of the Kashtira cards were hit in the OCG, and even though they're not seeing too much play, I could definitely see Konami wanting to stop the engine from being everyone's default if the Fiendsmith engine were to get hit as well. The second thing is Quarter Century Stampede. I could definitely see Konami at least giving Fenrir and Unicorn some sort of rarity upgrade there. That said, I think it's not a horrible idea to hold on to your playset of this card because it is such a splashable staple, but anything other than that, I would probably try to offload before this card gets hit or reprinted. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Up next, let's take a look at Crimson Dragon. So this card is a pretty cool generic level 12 synchro that is used primarily by Blue Eyes. Essentially, this card lets you cheat out a synchro dragon from the extra deck as long as it has the same level as one on your side of the field. So in Blue Eyes, you're able to target the Ultimate Spirit Dragon and cheat out either Stardust Cipher Dragon or Cosmic Blazar Dragon, both of which are really strong standalone monsters. Historically, Crimson Dragon has seen competitive play in decks like Manadium and Centurion. Those mostly felt like they were just outside of the format though. Now, however, Blue Eyes is expected to be a top-tier meta-relevant strategy based on its performance over in the OCG, and that's clearly reflected in the price and demand for Crimson Dragon. This card was actually just reprinted in the 2024 tins, so it has two different secret rare printings available. After the tins dropped, you could pick up this card for around $6, and the last time we covered this card, which was at the end of December, you could pick it up for around $12 to $15. Now the card has more than doubled in price once again, as either printing is going to cost you $30 to $35. Definitely an insane price spike. I guess this does tell us very clearly just how popular the Blue Eyes strategy is expected to be when it does come out. Fortunately, you do only need to pick up one copy for yourself to play, but it's definitely a necessary card in the extra deck if you want to play a more competitive version of Blue Eyes. Up next, we have Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. So this card is a really random one. I know a bunch of you have probably never even heard of it before. Believe it or not, this is actually a key starter for the Buster Blader engine, which is something that some players are looking at using in Blue Eyes. Basically, Buster Whelp searches for one of the Destruction Sword traps, which is able to turn into the Buster Blader Fusion and Buster Dragon, while Buster Whelp itself can be turned into the new Blue Eyes Link 1 monster. From what I've seen so far, this isn't the most competitive version of Blue Eyes. I think that would probably still be the Primite version with Lordly Load and Ether Barrel. However, I think players are looking at the Buster Blader build as a cheaper version of the deck that could still perform reasonably well at the local or regional level for those that don't want to spend almost $400 on the Primite engine itself. Now, to be fair, the Buster Lock can still be really strong if your opponent can't break it, and it is much more affordable. I think that Buster Whelp is the only expensive piece of the engine, since it only has one printing as a super rare from way back in Breakers of Shadow. I was actually going to talk about this card last week when it was only around $6 or $7. I decided to end up talking about something else, and now it turns out that the card has actually jumped to between $12 and $13 each. I haven't seen the engine hyped all that much. It's definitely something that's worth keeping an eye on as people experiment with different Blue Eyes builds over the next few weeks. One other Blue Eyes card that I want to touch on briefly, it's Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. So last week we had all the contents of the Blue Eyes structure deck revealed, and it does reprint most of the necessary Blue Eyes cards that you need to play the deck. One card that players seem to be trying to hype up that wasn't reprinted is Blue Eyes Alternative Ultimate Dragon. This card is one that has just one printing from back in the 2019 tins. It's a really scary card on the field as your opponent can't target or destroy it, and it can pop a card on the field every turn, or 3 cards if you used a Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon to make it. Now that said, I don't believe that this is something that I've actually seen in any of the competitive Blue Eyes lists running around. I think you use Wishes to equip the Neo Blue Eyes, who provides protection while it's in the graveyard, and you also play the Blue Eyes Tyrant Dragon as well, but Alternative Ultimate Dragon can't really be cheated out at all, and doesn't provide utility anywhere other than the field. Now that said, on TCG Player at least this card's price is pretty steady at around $10 to $12. It's fluctuated up and down a little bit, a decent amount over the past year. Nothing really has happened despite it not being really used all that much, but I have seen a bunch of players that are online on Facebook and trading groups and stuff trying to hype up this card and saying that you need to play it when that's really just not the case. If you are interested in playing Blue Eyes, don't fall into that trap with this card and feel like you need to buy it since it isn't necessary. However, just keep in mind that this is also one of the Kazuki Takahashi art cards. We also don't know if and when this card will ever be reprinted if you want to just collect all the Blue Eyes cards. Okay, so here's a really random one I want to touch on briefly. It's Flawless Perfection of the Tenyi. So this card is actually pretty strong for the Tenyi deck, which just got new support in Supreme Darkness. The thing is that it's Tenyi, so a lot of its play is going to revolve around keeping non-effect monsters on the field, which is always a bit difficult to make use of. Flawless Perfection can be placed from the deck or graveyard with Tenyi Infinity, the new Tenyi field spell, and this card is actually kind of insane. It makes all of your non-effect monsters on the field unaffected by monster effects, and if your opponent special summons an effect monster while you have a face down or non-effect monster on the field, you also get to draw 2 cards. So on one hand, yes, there is Tenyi stuff that did come out. Part of me is kind of wondering if this card is being abused by something that's trying to play the Primite engine, since it just refers to non-effect monsters rather than specifically Tenyi monsters. With this one, I'm really not too sure. Like, I don't think Blue Eyes would play it. Maybe in something else it could be good, maybe something like Harpies that try to leave a vanilla on the field so that you can Featherstorm them. Even if you are going second, right, you can activate this card and force your opponent to deal with it. Because something like Malice is always summoning monsters on your turn, maybe this is something that you can use to draw into additional engine pieces, maybe some additional hand traps. Anyways, this card was originally a rare from Rising Rampage, I believe. Hasn't really moved in price for that printing, but it got a super rare upgrade in an OTS tournament pack. Those were only 50 cents before, they're up to $5 each now. Just an interesting card for you guys to make note of and keep an eye on, since a bunch of us probably have tons of these lying around in our holo bulk. And finally, the last card I want to look at for today is Dominus Impulse. So this card is one of the most hyped cards to come out of Rage of the Abyss, second in the set just after Fuwalos. I guess it is a little bit of an older set right now, actually. This card is a hand trap that I personally think is absolutely insane, as it's able to negate any effect that would special summon a monster. Of course, as a Dominus card, you can't use light, earth, or wind monster effects the turn you activate this from your hand, so it's stopping you from using key cards like Effect Veiler, Nibiru, or Fuwalos, but choosing the order of your activations as well as deck building the right way can help you avoid being hurt by this card too much. Now in the current format, the main deck that's really able to abuse this card is of course Malice, since they mostly run dark monsters, but decks like Fire Kings and Mermail are able to use it as well. However, I do think that this is a card that you might want to consider picking up now if you haven't already. I'm expecting Malice to overtake Ryzeal as the best deck in the game after the next ban list and after the release of Alliance Insight, which is the next core set, so I think they'll definitely be making use of Dominus Impulse to play through Nibiru as well as stop your opponent from using the traps or Malice monster effects depending on the situation. I think we're starting to see Impulse trend upwards slightly. We have the QCRs, they were down at $160 or so, they're now up to about $180. While the secrets, they were hitting a low of $50 to $55, but they're back up to $60 now with the potential to continue trending upwards, especially because Fuwalos is being reprinted and that's going to take away some of the existing value from Rage of the Abyss. This probably isn't something that I'd go and invest in 100 copies of, since it's a pricier card. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with the format necessarily, but I think it's a really solid card to pick up a set of if you don't have them already and you are interested in playing Malice in the future. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Best of luck if you are ripping open some of those structure decks. It does look like the QCRs are actually going to be a little bit harder to pull. From what I was seeing online, it seems like you're going to pull about 2 QCRs per every 50 structure decks that you open, which is pretty bad ratios if you think about it, but I mean, they do look really, really nice, and you are probably going to want 3 copies of either Maiden or Wishes if you are planning on maxing out the deck. So good luck with that one. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.